It was super fun. We had a really great time with our speakers yesterday. Just a quick recap while we're waiting for a few more people to join on. We were really going after two key subjects on the first day of the conference. One of them was employment retention and growth. And I think it was a really cool mindset shift to think of it rather than growth, but actually multiplication. And the other one we really went after was the sense of work culture. How do we actually create a sense of work culture and a fragmented, divided, global, remote, working from home kind of a workforce? Some great learnings and some really practical takeaways, which was always fantastic to see. So I'm going to jump in and share my screen here. Wonderful, perfect. Now, if you are joining us for the first time today, you'll notice that in your calendar invite, you would have had access to actually this page here, which allows you to see our very, very new and very exciting Nobi landing pages for groups. This is a feature actually that Gregor, who is on the call today, and his wonderful team, the Nobi team, have been responsible for creating. We'll go over a little bit more of this later, but I just wanted to give you a first glance. If you haven't already jumped in, it gives us also a moment as a learner to jump into the right program that you'll be able to go through today. And you can see here's the front of the conference. This was yesterday's session. We always best practice throw in a pre-session with Nobi when we're doing conferences, because why? We actually want to know our audience so that we're actually not giving information that you already know. We actually want to equip you, give you an opportunity to develop your skills. And so that is there. If you haven't filled that out, you can quickly skip in there and do it. It'll take probably 5 minutes. And today we're actually going to be jumping into day 2 of Nobi Create. So I'm just going to do that real quickly and jump into our program. And we have a really, really fantastic structure today. Just as this is kind of coming up, the structure, you'll land on a page looking like this. And you're going to be jumping into continue. Now, just a couple of best practicey things. If you're on your phone or on a laptop, we fully encourage you to engage with the material. If you're driving in a car, totally understand you don't want to be texting or typing on your phones. But as much as you're able to, this is a back and forth. This is not just a one-directional kind of conference. Nobody's best practices. We love collaboration. We love bringing you guys all together to learn from you as much as you'll hear from our incredible speakers today. Enjoy. Christians gave us an excellent modeled example of that yesterday. In terms of orientation, you'll notice that session 1 is the first one that has been unlocked for you. Why? Because it helps me to orientate you as to what the structure of the day actually looks like. And you'll notice that it is right here. So we have a panel first thing this morning with our key speakers, looking at 2 very awesome topics. Yesterday was very much talking about challenges that we're facing and coming up with strategies. Today, call it trends and tools. We're looking at 2 very, very key subjects that are buzzing around, particularly in the L&D world at the moment. One of them is the subject of microlearning, and the other is the subject of AI. And we have Amy, we have Gregor, and we have Brian, who's joining us on the panel this morning. And I'm going to stop there for a second, actually, and just orientate my screen. But I wonder, Amy, would you take a moment to, we'll go Amy, then Gregor, then Brian. If you could introduce yourself, the name of your organization, and what you're going to be, give us a bit of a teaser about the breakout session that you are going to be running later on this morning. That would be wonderful.
Absolutely. So, hello, if we haven't met before, my name is Amy Edgen. I am the retail training manager at IMA Financial. And I think my teaser would probably be, we're going to talk about all the different things we've tried in the last 17 years.
That's a really good teaser. And I'm chomping at the bit to actually learn all the pitfalls, all the things she's tried. In the aim of, I'm assuming, getting better retention results, better ability to be able to apply for your employees, better completion rates, all of those things. But it's interesting to see. It's wonderful because I jokingly would say that her ceiling becomes our floor. We don't have to go and make the same mistakes. We can build on top of them and make new ones and grow faster. So very excited to learn from Amy this morning. Gregor.
Yeah, my name is Gregor Jarish. I'm the CTO and head of product at Nobi. So developing this wonderful product every day. And yeah, I have the pleasure to talk about AI, which is also something that we are cooking at the moment, but I don't want to tell too much right up front. So basically, it will be not too deep dive and not too technical, because I think that that is not the right place for that. I want to give an overview of what has been done on a really bird perspective, couple of different use cases, and then we're going to dive into what are pitfalls, how to avoid them, but also a little bit outlook of what's coming next in AI and how is the entire branch developing from here. Looking forward to
Wonderful.
it.
Very much looking forward to that. Don't worry, we'll keep you on track if we get too techie. Just kidding. Brian is not actually running a session. He ran one yesterday, and you can go back and check out the recordings from every single session from yesterday. They're up already on day one if you jump back to that landing page that I was showing you earlier. But we wanted to have Brian join us just for the panel discussion this morning on the subject of microlearning, because he's got some very valuable experience to battle into that. So without giving too much further away, Brian, do you want to quickly just introduce yourself, your organization, and just maybe a tiny bit of a, hey, this is what I know about microlearning, or this is my experience in it over the years.
Right. Absolutely. Good morning, everybody. My name is Brian Curry. I'm the Executive Director of Wisconsin Workforce Transformation. So it's exactly what it says. We transform workforces, vulnerable populations, using a lot of the microlearning and the AI. Although where Amy said she had 17 years of experience, I think I have like 17 weeks. So I'm a little bit newer at this, but hopefully can share some of the insights also that we've learned and the positive results we've definitely had with Nobi and the microlearning.
It's wonderful. So thank you to the three of you for jumping on board this morning for a bit panel. So the fun thing about this is not the Nicola, Amy, Brian, and Gregor show. This is very much a back and forth. So bring all of the questions that you have for these three guys in and around the subjects of microlearning and AI. Any questions that you have, you can type them into the chat here. And if you do, make sure that you share them with the group. Why is this important? If you simply write your response down here and move on, we won't actually be able to see them unless we look at the back end later. But we want to be able to see them now, so that we can actually ask these questions during the next 20 minutes and get some answers for you. I'm going to start the ball rolling with one kind of overview one for all three of you. And I'm going to stop sharing my screen in a moment. But my question is this: what are the major trends that you're seeing in learning and development that have led to or driven innovation in both AI and microlearning? I think that would be my question for you, and I'll type it in as you're kind of thinking about it. I think we'll do it in the order of the way that you introduce. So maybe Amy, you can tackle it first. Gregor, you can add insight. Brian, add on, and feel free to pass if you need more time to think about it. But that is my question. What are the major trends that you're seeing in learning and development that have really driven this AI and microlearning innovation?
No, it's a great question. So I would say mobile learning, gamification is huge right now, including through starting to explore more extended reality experiences. Personalization is a big key piece to the individual learner. It's more about meeting the learner where they are versus them coming to you. So social learning, just all things microlearning and the analytics supporting them so that we can not only make real-time adjustments on the background, but also continue to prove that this is helping our folks here at IMA.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I can think of enablement in a sense. I feel that tools become much easier to use, generally speaking, not just us. I think there is a general tendency in the entire tech branch, education branch, HR branch, that tools are easy to use. It's not the IT department anymore that needs to administer everything. It's you can empower the workforce that you have in the individual departments to actually do the things themselves rather than writing a ticket for someone else to do it. So I think enablement and effectiveness has grown immensely, which of course makes it again much easier for the learner indirectly, right? Because the feedback loops or the change loops in a sense are much faster done than previously. I think that had really a big impact, or is having a big impact as we speak. That comes to mind.
Yeah, it's interesting. And feel free to do a little back and forth after you've done a round. Go for it,
Yeah.
Brian.
Wow, that's brilliant conversation to follow. I think they took almost every one of my points. So about the only thing I'll quickly put in is I think I'm also seeing a shift that the market's really being driven by the consumer, right? For a long time, we had traditional education saying this is the way it has to be. And I think what's been brought up as far as the change in technology as well as all the other aspects really are driving it. So now I think there's a momentum to it, and I don't see it going back. So. But those were fantastic answers, so I'm glad to have them as panelists.
Yeah, that was going to be my way into it. It's driven by the consumer, and the way that our learners consume information is so incredibly different than it was, back. So my background's education, for those of you who weren't on the call yesterday. And, even when I was going through teacher training, that traditional sense of we all sit bums and seats, lectures, we can absorb large amounts of content, sit in rows for hours. It's just not a thing anymore. It's quick, it's bite-sized, it's on the go. We jokingly say sometimes Nobi, the best place to learn is when they're in the bathrooms, sitting on the toilet, if you will, because they can get stuff done in the in-betweens of work, right? So it's definitely changed. I think that's definitely driven both AI and microlearning. And feel free to type your questions into that group, into session 6, or sorry, action 6 of session 2 for me. And in the meantime, I'll just kind of ask another one. I think, the pressing question probably on everybody's minds is, how do you see microlearning? How do you see AI evolving over the coming years? And maybe we could be more specific and just say let's say the next 3 to 5. Amy's thinking about it, I can see.
I can have a take without saying too much, because obviously it's also strategy wise, but I think it's customization is a big topic. Customization on the one hand for the learner, on the other hand, more automation for the creator. And when I say automation, I don't mean automating the creator away. I think that is not a thing. We need that human component. We need that person that initially has the idea how to do it and then also kind of orchestrates how to do it. I think that maybe is a good word, orchestration. I think it will go away from the classical creation towards orchestration. And for the learner to be more interactive with the content, be able to have maybe a chatbot to talk about it, or have tailor-made content to specific needs that based on knowledge gaps or these kind of things. So I think those are the kind of big influences I can see both on the creator and on the learner front.
Amy, maybe I can tweak this for you, being that you're the subject expert in microlearning. Do you see, and let's not make this a closed question, but do what you will with it. Could you see the potential for AI to threaten microlearning, and not threaten microlearning per se, but threaten the instructional designers that are practiced in microlearning?
It's a great question.
It's a mean one, I know.
Well, and I think it's something that's been top of mind for a lot of folks in the last couple of years as things have evolved. It does come up from time to time. What I tend to tell folks is the work is always going to be there. It's just a matter of what we're doing. Overall, in our particular industry, we've seen a really tough time the last 5 to 10 years in developing new talent. There's a lot of folks that are retiring out, and it's about getting those newer folks up to speed as quickly as possible. So all I see from my perspective is, as Gregor said, it's going to be about being able to take the AI and leverage it to be able to make it more effective and customizable. And that way, it's basically helping our instructional designers. It's not taking away from it. It's allowing them to do a lot of the things that we've been talking about doing for years. If I had the time, I wish I could do this. Now we're going to have it because we can put some of these automations in place so that we can be more effective.
Yeah, I love that. Brian, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll take a little bit different perspective. We actually do the training for those individuals that are kind of being left behind using the micro learning for that. And we look at it as we're trying to train what the human skills are. So we're very much thinking about this as far as how is there a collective performance between AI and the humans. And so it's what
Mm.
has been said before, it's this augmentation, it's not a replacement, and really figuring out where those human skills are, and then training individuals on this. And we try to even think as far as that it's a collaborative, you have to share the values and ethics with the AI that you're using and that you're using to prompt to either build it or in the programs that are being delivered. So I'm kind of echoing everybody else, but we really are, like so many, are looking at those human skills and how do those human skills mesh with that, collaborative performance with AI.
Yeah, I love that. On the learning perspective, I think it forces us to get more effective in the way that we're crafting content. AI kind of it helps us with that information piece to get that information really, really quickly. But our audience doesn't necessarily know how to synthesize, interpret, evaluate all of those Bloom's taxonomy kind of, steps that we think through. So I think it encourages us to actually be better in our practice or in our craft of content, which I think is really brilliant. And then also I was talking to, was it Fernando Garabi, I think a year ago about this, and he's a subject matter expert on the subject of AI, very up to date with the trends. And he was saying the need for crafting content, particularly around the area of soft skills, becomes even more important. So to Brian's point, that personal human kind of element, the soft skills, how do I talk to each other? How do I look at you in the eye? How do I communicate effectively? How do I deal with conflict, particularly with our Gen Z, generation coming up into the workforce? That's something that AI is not able to replace. So being aware of that in the workforce and organizations is super important. Maybe Amy, you could embellish on that, because I have a feeling you would be able to speak into that from what you've been seeing the last 17 years.
Well, it's funny because, our intrepid president, who has since retired over 10 years ago, one of the things that he really was passionate about was translation, and not in the normal sense, right? It's not like we're translating language so much, except, AI could help with that at some point. It's more about bridging that gap between folks. So, Gregor alluded to it earlier. Like, I'm not going to sit here and talk about all of the super technical things because I'm going to lose my audience. I need to be able to meet you in the moment and let's talk about what's important to you. And then I am, acting as that sort of go-between. And I think it's about bridging those soft skills and marrying it with the microlearning. Doing more of a hybrid model more than anything at this point.
Yeah, that's really good. I love that. I'm curious, because you probably would have seen or heard this from employees and things. What kind of concerns do they have about how quickly AI is speeding up in terms of their work?
I think that some of the concerns has been transparency. It becomes, well, I feel comfortable in knowing where my support is coming from. And if my internal support is then relying on AI, like, what does that do to the quality of it overall? So it's about being really open and honest about how you're using it, but just also, being very forthcoming and saying, look, yes, we're going to be using this tool. However, that doesn't change the fact that, the quality of the education is going to be any different. It's going to be able to help us elevate it so that it's more customizable to you. It's just a tool like anything else. We work, with 20 other softwares. This is one more, essentially.
I love it. Yeah, it's a tool, not a replacement.
I think.
Do you want to add? Sorry, go for it.
Yeah, I think to add to that, I think one way to see it is that it will replace or automate certain tasks that we currently need to do manually. And I think it will free us time to do other things. And thinking about soft skills that were mentioned before. So on the one hand, it shouldn't be an either I do a lot of work or I practice soft skills in one way or another. Either it's by educating myself further or by actually applying them in the real world. But I sense that often having a lot of work, tedious amount of work, things that are just, you need to know them, but it doesn't require intelligent empathy or anything else. It's just because it is still a manual process to do. And I think AI can even, automation is not an AI thing, just to be clear. This is going around for decades already, right? That we're automating certain things, but AI can bring this yet to another level that can even years further to focus on the human again, focus on the interactions between each other, and focus on the relationships, because that's the fundament of culture. That's the fundament of having a group that sticks together and performs really well. And I think that there I see the power of AI, and I'm really looking forward to empowering people and giving them more time to focus on important things.
Yeah, wonderfully said. If I could just draw attention to the board again, because we talked about this before, if you have questions, feel free to post them. So you can see on action 6, I'd written my question in there. I made sure that I shared it to the group board. My one's here, and there's a couple more down here. So I just want to give space for these. So any one of you three can tackle this question of gamification. But the question from Derek is, how does gamification of microlearning address the attention brackets deficit versus resilient economy? And maybe if that needs clarity, Derek, feel free to jump off your mic and embellish for us.
It's clear for me. I can jump in there. I would say it's about being able to turn something that can historically be looked at as a deficit and turn it into an opportunity. Because so many of the folks that are coming out of these generational changes right now, that's what they grew up with. They're used to gamifying things. Like if you look at what they're being taught in school, like they're integrating Kahoots. They're looking at all of these different softwares where you can go in and you can basically turn it into a game where it doesn't feel like you are learning. You're just playing the game. But as a added side benefit, you are then getting that exposure to that information, and then also being able to retain it and apply it towards the next situation with time.
Yeah, good response. Anybody else want to jump in there?
Brian, if you like. Otherwise, I cannot.
I'll be very brief, but I just saw a comment come up in the chat, which is really critical. I think it's kind of the same thing that happened with AI. We've been doing AI for a long time, and then quickly it got here, right? And I think gamification, the same thing. It's been around for a long time. We've been using it, and then it quickly arrived. I think on a neuroscience standpoint, even more than this generation being grown up with it, which amplifies it, it really just speaks to how we think, how we are on a competitive nature, curiosity. And so it really touches us, I think, on the neuroscience side. So I'll kind of bow out with my theoretical there and let you talk, Gregor.
Not just my thoughts, where gamification is a very broad term, and a lot of people have different ideas of what it contains and what it doesn't. So that's why it can be misunderstood. Very often it's points, badges, leaderboards, right? So the classical thing of you make a competition out of it, and that's going to solve all the engagement problems you might have. I like to think of gamification as human-centered motivations. So there is kind of there's the octalysis framework, if you might have heard about it. This is a very popular gamification framework on basically how to analyze, but also design application towards certain human motivations. And there are 8 different categories, and it's basically white hat and black hat. So it's basically the intrinsic, it's all kinds of intrinsic values, but something is truly intrinsic, like the aspiration to go after certain storytelling or to socialize with others, or these kind of things. And then there are the ones that are triggered externally, such as if you don't do this, then you lose something. Or urgency, creating urgency in some way that you need to follow certain timelines. So there's different categories, and I think it all is about how can we motivate people to do something. Because of course you can, the scarcity is another one, right? I mean, this popular one is a very old school one in a sense, but it is a motivation, and sometimes in certain moments it can be a good one. It's a bad practice to do this all the time and too much, but it can be a good one. And I think that's really how I understand gamification. I mean, yes, having a badge here, getting a point there is nice, and some people really like that, and for certain learning types this is a good strategy. Other learning types need other strategies, and I think if we really boil it down to what can we do to motivate people, and that is on the one hand the tools on how they behave, but then of course the content. Is the structure good, but is it also, does it make sense for the person? Is the person ready enough to consume that level of content? I think that there is yeah, that's really interesting in a sense.
Yeah, it's really good. Let me just switch hats from gamification for a second. Amy, this is for you, just because I think I'm curious in our world as well. On the James is just asking what the name of the framework was. Can you just repeat that for him, Gregor? I'll butcher it if I try to say it correctly, so I know you've got the correct pronunciation. Maybe he can type it into the chat, then everybody will be able
sorry,
to.
that's what I wanted to. Octalis framework, but I type it in the chat so everybody can see.
It'll also be on the group board as well. Wonderful, thanks team, jumping in there. Yeah, Amy, I'm curious. So one of the questions I hear from clients a fair amount is how can microlearning be integrated into a larger, sorry, I lie. I want to know what the biggest challenges are that you've seen in scaling microlearning in the context of an organization, and how organizations can overcome them. So I think often we're going from large form content, we've got our PowerPoints, we've got our long videos, and then suddenly, we make a switch to microlearning. I'm curious, what are the big challenges in scaling it across the organization that you've seen, and how can organizations overcome them?
Yeah, and I'm going to answer this not only from my L&D side of things, but also from my operations background, because we've seen this so much in software implementation as a whole. Yeah. I think a lot of it is about, we need to make sure that we're not over-engineering experiences, because we need to keep asking that question. Yes, we can now, the advent of AI and microlearning and being able to, have fantastic products like Nobi opens up the floodgates, but we also need to be careful and selective of what it is that we're choosing as we go through it. Be strategic in its application. We saw, if you want to go back to it, we saw a similar trend happen when the internet first came on, 40 years ago. And we're still working on how to best manage it today, because it gave you all this access. So how do you curate it? How do you manage it? We'll be facing those same challenges as we continue to marry AI with microlearning. And it's going to be about striking that balance between efficiency and information at your fingertips without losing the experience, the humanity, and the empathy we gain through mentorship. So it's those moments that really drive the mentorship home and the microlearning lessons home. So not only how we do it, but also guiding others who might be impatient to adopt technologies that go directly to the bottom line.
Yeah, really good. I'll let the other panelists weigh in on that if they want to.
Also giving a 1-minute time check for break.
Absolutely.
I'm just going to say ditto, because that was a great answer. So
yeah, wonderful. That wraps up just about wraps up the end of our first session, team. Thank you so much to the three of you for giving us, I think, just a tiny teaser. I mean, I know you guys are going to deep dive a little bit more in your sessions, but tackling some of these really big issues, and those two are very, very front and center. So I hope that helps the rest of us who are listening and participating this morning. Let me just orientate you to the screen a little bit here. Everybody see my screen again? You can see here we were just in action 6. We're going to jump into action 7. And why am I bringing this up now? Because we're about to dive into a 15-minute break. I'll put a timer on in a moment. That means if you are one of those early birds, sorry, not an early bird like myself, Amy and I know it is 7:30 we started because we love you so much. I know East Coast it's 10:30, so it might be a little bit easier, but some of us might need coffee. But during that coffee break, I would suggest a couple of ways to use that 15 minutes. Stretch, walk around, go get coffee, but also take a moment to go, what were my key takeaways from this session? Feel free to type them in, spend a couple of minutes reflecting, and share them to the group. Likewise, feel free to connect with, if there's anyone on the call, or maybe I'm putting our panelists on the spot, but if you've got an individual question for them during this 15-minute break, perhaps that might be a moment to actually just type away and connect with each other during this 15-minute break. You'll find that when we come back in 15 minutes, session 3 will be unlocked. And Amy, do you want to give us a 2-line teaser to hook them in, reel them in, so they know what's coming?
So many wonderful things.
There you have it, folks.
We'll just have to wait and see.